Ukraine's air defense crisis worsens as Putin's Su-35 fighters reportedly hunt for Patriot systems. Russia's Kh-31PM targets Ukrainian Patriots as NATO scrambles to bolster Kyiv's shrinking air defense. Su-35 fighters reportedly go on a radar hunting spree with Kh-31PM missiles targeting Ukraine's air defense systems. Russia takes aim at Ukraine's last few Patriots as Kh-31PM missiles are reportedly fired from around 125 kilometers away. Footage has surfaced showing a Russian Su-35 firing a Kh-31PM missile at Ukraine, according to Military Watch. The Russian missile was reportedly aimed at components of a Ukrainian MIM-104 Patriot air defense system during the strike. The footage's range Q indicated that the Kh-31PM was launched from about 125 kilometers away, highlighting its long-range engagement capability. The Kh-31PM is designed to hunt radar emissions, making it a specialized threat against air defense systems that rely on active radars. Unlike the older Kh-31P, the Kh-31PM reportedly uses a broadband multiband passive seeker to detect and engage different radar signals. The missile can target a wider range of radar systems without emitting its own signal, making detection harder before the final attack. The Kh-31 family uses a rocket booster during launch before switching to a ramjet engine for sustained high-speed flight. Open-source estimates put later Kh-31 variants at speeds of around Mach 4 or higher, giving defenders little time to react. Russian Su-35 fighters have also been observed carrying Kh-31PM missiles in Ukraine, indicating continued use of the weapon in air defense suppression missions. The missile's high speed and large warhead can sharply reduce the time available for air defense crews to detect the threat and relocate. French President Macron said France would provide Ukraine with more interceptor missiles as Kyiv faced continued Russian missile and drone attacks. Macron on August 22 said France would accelerate military equipment deliveries to Ukraine amid the intensifying Russian strikes. The announcement came after a deadly Russian double-tap strike on Kryvyi Rih, which targeted the Ukrainian city in 2 waves. Macron said he spoke with Zelensky after the daylight attack and expressed deep concern over Russia's continued targeting of Ukraine. Emmanuel Macron said, and I quote, "With these strikes and those this week against Kyiv, Russia is continuing and intensifying the crime of its aggression. By systematically targeting civilians, and by choosing intimidation and escalation, Russia is likely seeking to project strength but is above all revealing an admission of weakness. In this context, it is crucial to provide Ukraine with all the necessary means to defend its skies and thwart this aggression. I announced to President Zelensky the strengthening of our support, with the delivery of interceptors and the continuation of our cooperation." In the wake of the launch meeting of the anti-missile coalition held in Paris on July 13 last and the letter of intent signed on November 17, 2025. It is essential that all countries with capabilities at their disposal also join this effort. Unquote. Zelensky said his nearly 2-hour call with Macron also focused on strengthening Ukraine's air defenses and securing additional financing for the war effort. The two leaders agreed to accelerate deliveries of France's latest weapons and missiles as Ukraine sought to strengthen its defenses. Zelensky also thanked Macron for granting licenses that would allow French missiles to be produced in Ukraine, expanding Kyiv's local defense capacity. Kyiv has repeatedly appealed for more interceptor missiles as Russian missile and drone attacks continue to overwhelm parts of Ukraine's air defenses. This came as Putin rejected Ukraine's ceasefire proposal while Moscow continued its escalating attacks across multiple Ukrainian cities.
As for what is happening now, this is, of course, the result of yet another reckless move by the Kyiv regime and its Western backers, who have set out to inflict yet another strategic defeat on Russia. This time, as is well known, within 40 days and by means of massive missile strikes and UAV attacks on our civilian infrastructure and logistics. A public declaration was made stating the aim to destroy entire sectors of our country's economy and to undermine the unity of our people and the cohesion of Russian society. In short, the aim is to bring Russia to the brink of collapse, something they have long dreamt of and constantly talk about. As is well known, this 40-day period expired on August 5th. And so, the question arises, what is the result? Of course, strikes against civilian, virtually unprotected targets and, most importantly, against civilians, cause economic damage to our country and result in losses. And the loss of every single person, I want to emphasize this, is always a tragedy. for the family, for loved ones, and for the whole country. We know full well that the Nazis during the Great Patriotic War and the Second World War, and the neo-Nazis today, derived, and, by all accounts, continue to derive, a particular sense of satisfaction and pleasure from committing such crimes, and we can see that these crimes are continuing. Yet the outcome for the enemy was the exact opposite of what was expected. Of course, no turning point in the confrontation with Russia occurred, nor could it have done. The Kyiv regime and its patrons cannot gain any advantage, have not gained one, and never will. Moreover, in response to this obvious escalation, and I emphasize obvious, which is not based on an objective analysis of the situation on the battlefield or the state of the Ukrainian economy, society, and state, which is being eroded by corruption, but rather on public relations and political ambitions. In response to this reckless venture, we have indeed stepped up our strikes, as you have just mentioned. We have stepped up strikes against enterprises in Ukraine's defense industrial complex, including those in Kyiv, and have begun to respond to the enemy's actions against our civilian industrial and logistics facilities. The Kyiv regime has set itself the goal of damaging our economy. What has it done? It has opened this Pandora's box all by itself. Well then, you'll get a response targeting your most vulnerable economic sectors, which, to be honest, are already on their last legs. This, incidentally, also applies to agricultural production, from the export of which the Kyiv regime receives its main income. Moving on, do you want to disrupt our logistics? We might ask the enemy this question. Well then, a response will not be long in coming. Here you go. At the same time, the actions of the Russian army are, of course, far more devastating and far more destructive. I have said time and again, there will always be a response. And most importantly, the enemy's actions have had absolutely no impact on the situation at the front. Moreover, our troops are not only continuing their offensive on all fronts, but have also stepped up the pace of their advance. The Russian armed forces are confidently carrying out their tasks to fully achieve the objectives of the special military operation. Of course, in doing so, we must and will continue to improve our air defense system and enhance its capabilities. We need to improve coordination between security and civilian agencies at all levels and to harness the capabilities of state-owned enterprises and the private sector. This is particularly important in the run-up to the elections to the State Duma and other governing bodies. The adversary is attempting to intimidate us and disrupt the elections. We will not allow it to do so. I am confident that this attempt to exert informational and psychological influence on Russian society is doomed to failure. We will, of course, continue to strengthen Russian statehood and the legitimacy of the authorities. At the same time, Russia's response to yet another provocation by the Kyiv regime appears, by all accounts, to be a highly sensitive issue for them, leading to serious consequences and bringing the situation in a number of key areas to a critical level. That is precisely why today the Kyiv authorities, through intermediaries whose views we certainly respect, are attempting to extricate themselves from the situation in which they find themselves, a situation which, I wish to emphasize, they themselves have provoked. The Kyiv regime is trying to prevent this situation from taking a catastrophic turn, and such trends, it would appear, are becoming apparent. These trends are becoming evident. At the same time, the proposals being put to us are, at times, I would say, rather outlandish and are unacceptable. We are always ready for dialogue, but only on the basis of the realities on the ground.
Upgrade your news experience with the all-new HT app. Download now.